Morning, folks. Thanks for joining me. Firstly, I need to say that there's some building going on at the junior school. So if you hear anything, it's because the builders have started their diggers and things, which looks really cool and quite fun, actually, but might be a bit of noise and a bit of vibration. But hello, welcome to our Parents Forum this week. It's been quite an unprecedented week, lots of mixed messages, and I know you've probably got loads of questions. Thank you for those who have sent some questions beforehand. That was really useful. It's still all very uncertain. I know the government on Sunday announced the reintegration and the reopening of schools for certain year groups. I'd probably like to start off with talking about why we're not opening for year one, just to clarify that. But I completely understand that you're in a position of uncertainty, you're in a position about do I or don't I send my children back, and when are the other year groups coming back, what it's going to look like in school, the risks that surround that, social distancing, first aid, homeschooling, how will that look. There are many elements of this and from this announcement that we're planning, we're discussing at length with the leaders here at school and the teachers. And all I would say is the priority is to keep your children safe if we do open. That obviously will have an impact on what the curriculum will look like. And for me, it's about safety and the mental health well-being of all of your children if you send them in. Thank you for filling in and submitting your survey responses. That's been analysed at the moment. So I can't give you any updates on what that looks like. As soon as I know, then I'll let you know what the kind of community is thinking. It certainly helps me and the rest of the teachers and leaders and governors to kind of get a grasp of how you're thinking, which is obviously incredibly important. So I felt consulting you gave me a greater understanding about moving forward with any plans. So yeah, the reason why, and just to kind of clarify, we're not officially a primary school. So we federated 2 years ago, and it was the 2-year anniversary, actually, on May the 4th, a few weeks ago, of the federation. And we are still officially an infant and junior school that has federated. And we still have separate Ofsted, separate budgets, but we're under one governing body. So the announcement that was made was for primary schools that would open for reception year 1 and year 6. Now, infant schools that we only need to open for reception, and obviously if you're a junior school for year 6. There's no guidance about why they've done this or what reasons, but my understanding would be, and if we do open on June the 1st for reception, they'll need to be taught in very small groups, which obviously probably answer one of the questions that was sent beforehand. In very small groups, because let's face it, it's going to be quite a tough task to socially distance 4 and 5-year-olds. So the smaller groups means that they require more space. And most infant schools across the country will probably be no more than two form-entry, maybe the odd 3 form-entry, particularly in Gloucestershire. So there's only actually 6 classrooms. Now, if you split a cohort of 60 children in reception, or even 24 that we have, you're going to need a number of those classrooms to accommodate the smaller group sizes, the smaller class sizes. So that's the main reason why. And equally, just because if we had to have year 1 in as well, we wouldn't know where to put them. And I'd feel really strongly about moving the year 1s to another building, to the junior school. And as I referred to in my letter, and probably last week, that it's going to be a very unfamiliar place for the children when they return. And I think trying to reduce the risk, reduce the anxiety, we need to try and keep it as safe and as familiar for those children coming in. That will be our main premise, our main vision, if the children start on the 1st, is safety and familiarity, so we can build upon any anxieties that they have, and obviously reassuring you. One of the other questions, just before I carry on, if you've signed into your account, please send anything through on the live chat, but I've got a number of other things to just respond to before you do that. So that is there as an option for you. In terms of other primary school, other primary cohorts, the year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, including year one. The government has said that they will get at least a month's worth of schooling before we start back in September. I'm not quite sure how that's going to be able to be managed based on what I've just referred to in terms of space, safety, and trying to adhere to the social distancing measures as best as we can. So I have no answers on that, but my first thought and my feeling is that's going to be pretty impossible to manage. So let's obviously wait and see for that. The measures for the kind of social distancing and when the children are in school, when they start, we will do obviously the smaller group sizes. We'll do some staggered lunch times and break times, and obviously the drop-offs and how that will look in terms of parents coming onto site will be very, very, very different to what it was before. All of these measures, all of this information, we're putting together for you right now to send out to you at some point next week. I'm sure you agree, it's taken a lot of time, a lot of strategic thinking about how this is going to work safely, effectively, and obviously not trying to create a negative atmosphere for the children and yourselves. So all this information will be sent out in a publication, which I'll send out to you next week once all the teachers and leaders have gone through it, what it's going to look like in school, how it's going to affect you. But all of it will be in line with the things that I've sent in terms of those key documents that you can find on the Department for Education or the government website. All those things in there is something we're adhering to. The other thing I think is really important to mention is when the children, and if the children are on site, that we are now using, the local authority have put together the health and safety risk assessments for what that will look like in terms of the things I've mentioned before about how we're going to clean the school and the clean toys, surfaces, and all those other bits and pieces, first aid, children coming onto the site, parents coming onto the site. Everything has been put together into a plan for schools to adopt as a risk assessment, which I will also send on Dojo once that's finalised, so you can kind of see the things that we're planning to do and reviewing as an ongoing thing. If this happens, if schools do reopen on June the 1st, I just need to reassure you that it's going to be obviously strange from the outset, but it will be something we'll be reviewing on a daily basis, how things are working. So hopefully you can obviously be patient with us there. Obviously, those families that will be dropping off the children, or if that happens, the suggestion probably will be it'd be one parent to drop off, particularly if they're coming from shielded families. And if that's the case, then obviously those parents won't be allowed on site, but the teachers will be there to greet those children, which is obviously really important. In terms of year sixes, I had a question about transition days. Uniform will be expected to be worn, obviously, just so we can kind of distinguish the children. Year six transition day, in terms of how that's going to happen, are they going to have any days up at their new school? We don't know. All I can say is that we're doing a lot of work with the secondary schools already in terms of Zoom meetings and email. And as I said before, previously mentioned, that we've got quite a lot of time to be able to do this thoroughly, and to make sure that their year six's new teachers for secondary school have got all the information that they need. So that's a little bit of a silver lining, really. As much as the year sixes aren't here, we are talking about them quite a lot with their new teachers. Okay. I understand this is a frustrating time for all of you, and you're probably a bit in limbo, really. From some of the results that I've seen on the survey, people are don't know whether to send the children to school, and the local authority have made it quite clear that if you don't send the children to school, which if they should be coming to school if they're eligible to come to school, no fines will be processed for non-attendance. How long that will last, I don't know. I would have thought it will last until we start again in September, but I'm not sure. All I know is that no fining will be taking place for the time being. Okay. In terms of, if you put the reception in year six to one side, all key worker family children will still be coming to school full time. those that need it. And as always, I will send out on Dojo for parents to get back in touch with me or send me an email with what provision they require for their children. So that those families and those children still will be expected to be in if need be, and obviously there'll be plans in place for those children. So someone's asked whether we'd consider a holiday school through the summer. Okay, that's a good question. I can't. These are the things I'll write down and keep a record of, because we don't know what the summer holidays looks like yet. We don't know if the schools are going to be open for key workers. And on that, one of the things that I will be talking to with all the staff and that's the out of hours service, and whether or not how we would manage opening that for parents, obviously with hours that obviously exceed 3 p.m. and whether we can do something like that. That's on our agenda, and we're discussing how that might work. So that's certainly there. So I'm just reading what people are putting. Give me a sec. Yeah, I think we've got something here. Thank you, Mrs. Costa, about coming back properly pre-summer, keeping in touch. So like kit days, keeping in touch days, less about the schooling. All I can say is that what the provision will look like if the children come back from the 1st of June is going to be incredibly different based around the restrictions that we're having to deal with space and the amount of pupils. So it will definitely be all around health and well-being, a familiarity for those children that will be coming in. Yes, there's obviously going to be a curriculum, but that will be slightly different. The key children, the key families, those families that are on the front line, those children are doing lessons as we speak. So we'll be doing English and maths, but we do want to make sure that we're doing things to support the emotional development of your children. Thanks, Mr. Taylor. Yes, so that's something that obviously we're considering and looking at in terms of the provision sent home. The level of the standard of work, the standard of education that we send home will still continue. But I think we need to imagine that if you have to understand with the amount of staff that we have at our disposal, obviously we have a number of staff that are still shielding until late in June. And a lot of the rest of the teachers probably will be in school on a system supporting the classes in reception in year 6. So Dojo will still be going ahead. Activities will still be sent, but it might not be as frequent during the week, bearing in mind the staff will be back in school. But yes, I think, and also in terms of how we mirror that, and we've taken advice, obviously listened to some of the things you said regarding Zoom. We will be doing, and we can access Zoom in school now, which is good. There will be opportunities during the school day where teachers, if we're in school, will be accessing Zoom, so folks can click on the link and there'll be some certain lessons during the school day. Just because we feel that even though maybe year 6 are in or reception are in, there'll be other things that children can do via Zoom during the school day. So that's definitely something we're looking into. Preschool, yes, we'll be opening from the 1st of June if it happens. I know Casey and the team are putting a letter together and I've looked at that and it looks fairly straightforward. That will be coming out next week. In terms of transition to reception, that's obviously key. They're working on that now in terms of those transition documents to reception. It would be nice if the children from preschool have the opportunity just to have a look around the classes as we would normally do. But obviously we'll need to manage that with all the rest of the classes in, all the children that are currently will be eligible to be in. So that's definitely something that's on the agenda. Marshall, I did mention this. We don't know. The only guidance we have is the guidance being that children in other year groups should be back at least a month before we go back, which is really interesting. So if you think the end of term is July the 17th, that would mean that the rest of the school should be in school 2 weeks after the 1st of June, which seems bonkers to me. And I think if you consider full-time provision as a model going ahead from the 1st of June, I'm particularly worried for the health and the safety of the children about where they would go, and how many teachers I have to be able to teach the children, and in terms of how we do thorough cleaning of the school would be a massive issue. So I'm not quite sure how they're going to manage that, and how they're going to direct us in accepting the other year groups in. Yes, thank you, Mr. Taylor. So when the reception are in, we'll be doing things about transition to year one, because that's all part of the mental health, well-being, emotional development, and the kind of things they'll be expecting in year one. Absolutely. I think what we're going to try and do, if that's the case, is make sure they spend some time in those year one classes, just to see what it looks like. So yeah, there'll be opportunities for children to do that. I agree, and Mr. Donnelly, the guidance is very clear, regardless of siblings. And I know this is frustrating. If you've got one child that be in and one child that isn't, that's just, I really don't know how I can reassure you with that, other than it's just a bit of a mockery, if you ask me. But one child in, one at home. Potentially, if you've got to go back to work and there's no childcare, which is interesting, the government made a U-turn on the day after this announcement. They said childminders can go back to work. So it is frustrating, and it's not clear. And I think your questions, which are really obviously important, very important, that it's coming from all mixed messages from up above, from the government. And I'm pretty much doing what I can to fulfill a safe environment for the children and the ones that are eligible to come onto site, but knowing full well we need to keep those at home that aren't supposed to be on site engaged still, and feel part of the school community. So as I said, the mixed messages don't help. Yes, I've heard that in terms of the GDPR compliance, and we've had emails from Zoom saying that they are. And the local authority have told us that, as far as they're concerned, this is okay at the moment. I've had no notification to say we shouldn't be using it. But if there is an issue with Zoom, obviously we won't be using Zoom, and obviously we can record things through Dojo, and we can pre-record things. So there are other options. Yeah, I understand. I think this is some of the personal accounts that we're having. I think some people are having issues with their own personal accounts, but I think because with Zoom, schools are recognised with educational emails and accounts, there's a level of protection that we've been reassured that's there. Microsoft Teams are there. Yeah, that's good. Mr. Costa. So there's no recommendation that staff should be wearing PPE. It's unmanageable in school. All I would say is, if the children start to show symptoms, obviously the current symptoms that we're all aware of, then there will be PPE in place to isolate children and to isolate those members of the staff. But that's obviously the onus on parents as well, to keep an eye on those things at home. Because I think it's essential that you communicate with us before sending your children in, if that's what happens. Thank you, Mrs. Wright. Yeah, no, a full primary school, infant and junior schools are completely different. They have different registration DFE numbers. They have different budgets, different Ofsteds, and regardless of us, we're fortunate to be on the same site. If I opened up the site for year ones as well, I'd struggle to have them in at the moment. If reception year 6 come in, majority of the classes at the infants and the juniors will be used by those year groups, which is obviously why I'm a little bit concerned about when other year groups are reintroduced. But as I said, in infant school, the reception children will need to be in small groups, which will then mean the 6 classrooms at the infant school will be used primarily by reception to keep them safe and to try and adhere to the social distancing guidelines as closely as possible. So It's a tough one, but that's the guidance from the government that infant schools don't need to have year ones in. And if I'm completely honest, my own personal feeling is this is all bonkers. And I know there are a number of schools around Gloucestershire that have taken the stance of they're not opening at all, regardless of what the government is saying. And let's see what the unions have to say today about that, because that's something else that I'll be listening to. So yes, I know it's frustrating in terms of the year one groups, but it's mainly down to safety and the ability to be able to manage what's coming on the 1st of June. Obviously, children that are in year one who are part of key worker families, then that's absolutely fine. They should be in. That's not a problem. And as I said before, all children who are from key worker families obviously can use us provision. It's not a problem. Mr. Taylor, you said a children's school bubble if any of their peers get symptoms. Yes, of course. So a number of resources that will be showing the children about COVID-19 and the things that we need to try and adhere to and abide by. So we'll be reinforcing that with the children. And we've thought about how that might look at break times and lunch times, and keeping the children in as small a group as possible in certain areas in the playground, which is why the hall at the infant school is going to be closed off, because creating larger areas for children to run around in and things is obviously not what we want to do. And the cleaning of that would be difficult and challenging to do on a daily basis with the staff and resources that we have. So we'll obviously continue to tell the children in the most sensitive way so it doesn't affect them or doesn't give them too many anxieties about coming in. But there's no hiding the truth that it will be a very different place for them. Well, if you remember listening to Boris Johnson, Mr. Donnelly, I believe he said employers should not be impeding people going back to work based on childcare. So they have to accommodate those needs for you. If that's the issue, I mean, that's referring back to your previous point. If you've got children in different year groups, which a lot of our families have, then your employers shouldn't be impeding you going back to work or not going back to work based on childcare issues. Well, that's true, Mr. McGoldrick. You will probably get I imagine you'll be getting many inquiries being a childminder. And obviously we know which year groups can't attend. So yes, I'd imagine that's why the government said that childminders and other caregivers are now key workers and can go back to work, mainly because they've realised that the amount of children that don't fall into reception in year 6 will require childcare if their parents are going back to work. Me personally, as I said, I don't necessarily agree with what's going on, but we'll do the best we can. But me personally, I think the construction industry, manufacturing, all these industries that have been told they can go back to work and that they're reopening, that for me would then be the next stage of allowing children to come back to school. So for me, those families in those industries should then become or be accommodated within the key worker families, and then those children come to school. That would be a nice phased entry to me. Or a sensible one, really, because obviously that's what most of those industries are back now, and they are working, and they obviously have children. Well, Mr. Taylor, you're absolutely right. Of course I will. And again, in the guidance, it says if there are any children showing any symptoms, obviously parents will be informed, but the school doesn't need to close. And as I said before, parents would need to let us know if that's happening. Obviously, if they are not seeing anything at home or we're seeing something at school, we'll act immediately. Our risk assessments will say about isolation, protective equipment for the staff supervising those children, and obviously calling you immediately. And then in terms of how that would work with us, if a child does become symptomatic or is showing signs, then obviously a rigorous cleaning process will be initiated. I mean, this is really crazy times, to be honest, folks. It's the amount of mixed messages that we're receiving. All I would say is the messages I'm giving you today are very consistent with the rest of the community in terms of the other schools that surround us. All the head teachers are feeling the same in terms of really concerned about how we would manage a phased entry. If you're keen to go on the DfE website, and this is by no accident, the Department for Education seem to release their publications in the early hours of the morning. I suppose that's quite clever. And it basically says that schools should be providing as best provision as we possibly can to manage the phased entry. But it is up to the school's discretion how we can do that. And that'll be very different for every establishment. And as I said to you before, and I'll keep reiterating this from now and for the foreseeable, is safety for your children is paramount. And for me, that probably aligns with how you're feeling in terms of whether you send them in or not. Safety is paramount, cleaning is paramount, and the emotional development and well-being of the children is paramount. I mean, I've honestly never dealt with anything like this before in my career or experiences as a teacher or a head teacher of a school. And it's just been all thought in the completely wrong way. And it's not being considered. They've not considered the feelings and the worries that parents would have. And I'd hate to say it, but it's probably down to the fact that we need to get the economy going, which we all understand. Of course we do. But I'm sure you probably saw the Facebook story about a head teacher that quite happily says he would rather have children at home or redo the whole year than for something awful to happen to them. And I think that's where our gut instincts really lie, but very aware that we want to give the perception to you and the community that we're here for you and your children. We'd love to see them, but they need to be in an environment where it is safe, manageable, and where we're going to be able to improve their self-esteem and their emotional development. Yeah, I think so, Mrs. Marshall. I think if both parents are key workers, they obviously would be coming to school, regardless if they're reception or year 6, because they are key worker families. So it doesn't matter if they're in year 4 or year 3, they'd still be in school as part of the key worker family. Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Taylor. So obviously we'll be considering that, and I have to say, if we do open, we know Mrs. Tilley and Mrs. Parfitt are shielding at the moment, but there are other teachers that the children know. So we'll make sure the youngest children who need the most familiarity will have teachers that teach them, that they know who they are. So we know Mr. Kingshott and Mrs. May spend a lot of time in reception, and the teaching assistants will be involved. So 100% making sure that that key cohort of reception children who we looking for familiar faces will have them. But I have to be honest and tell you that Mrs. Tilley and Mrs. Parfitt, for the time being, are shielding to keep. So we need to make sure we keep them safe, but they will be back soon. So Mrs. Abbott will be around. So those children that see Mrs. Abbott for some social groups and things, I know that Mrs. Abbott will be around. So we'll do all we can to make sure that the right people are in school for the children, so they feel comfortable when they arrive. In terms of what that will look like, I will outline all what we're deciding to do, the blueprint for a phased entry. We're doing it to try and be as sensitive and as sensible as possible. So we make sure, again, and I reiterate, and you're probably bored of this now, that the children are safe and secure, that they're coming to a clean environment, a familiar environment, and that their emotional development and well-being is being developed and improved. So it's very, very key. And I will outline all this for you, and it will come out in a publication. So we're just finalising those plans. I would hate to circulate all this information in dribs and drabs. I want it to be absolutely accurate for you, so you feel reassured and confident that if this does happen on June the 1st, that you'll know your children are coming in, and we've thought of everything we possibly can to make sure that things are going to be kept safe for them and for the staff. I don't think I've missed anything. It's an absolute pleasure, people. I appreciate your comments, and I won't respond to them because I get quite emotional about it. But it's this is my second family. You're my second family, and I care about your kids incredibly. And yes, it's nice to see those that are coming in for the key worker families. It'd be lovely to see the rest, but their safety is key. And I just want to make sure that whatever we circulate and communicate with you is accurate and reassuring for the coming weeks. And as I said, we're only doing as much as we can in terms of the information we have that's as accurate as possible. Everything else are kind of just is kind of pick it out from the air, really. And I don't want to make any plans for other year groups or anything like that. We've got some ideas, but nothing, no blueprints have been put in place for those things until we've had some more guidance and clarity. Right. Okay. I think most people are coming on to comments now, which is lovely. So thank you for those. I think most questions, hopefully I've responded to those, and thank you for those that have sent them in. Hopefully I've clarified as much as I possibly can for you today. Well done. I wonder if you got your 2 questions right in the quiz earlier, if you took part. So I'm sure you did with Tennessee and Duran. I hope you enjoyed that. Lovely. Okay. Right. Thank you very much. If anything changes, as like last week, we did a forum on the Monday. If there's anything new that happens at all that's going to affect June the 1st onwards, then I'll hold a kind of extraordinary forum just to kind of touch base with you, and we'll go from there. But as it stands, please wait for that publication. It will be with you at some point next week. We just need to clarify and just cement these plans as best as we can. And if that comes out before next Friday, then I can just reiterate and confirm what's going to happen in a few weeks' time. But probably the way things are, lots happens in a number of days with the current situation. And yeah, we'll just watch this space, I suppose. But thanks for stopping by. I hope that was clear enough for you. Thank you for your kind messages. Thank you for all the work you're doing with your children at home. We know it's incredibly tough. And I know for me, and I'll be honest with you, that my son's finding now quite tough. I think there's such message of a new normal that children are getting used to, and I think that's a bit of a struggle for them. And I know my son's finding it tough either to sleep or because he's not doing the things or thinking about the things that he would have to do at school and all of his friends. So I understand that this is probably an incredibly tough time for the children. But it's nice to speak to you. It's nice to speak to them on a Friday. I'll continue to do that. And have a nice weekend. I hope you enjoy the sunshine. I think we're getting a little bit. And unlimited exercise. So go and enjoy a run or a cycle or whatever. But no 5-a-side football games on the park, please. But yeah, enjoy yourselves. Have a nice weekend. And I will see you next week. Take care.